Welcome back. This is part 2 of creating a healthy family culture in your student ministry. And remember what we're all about here. We're about creating relational bridges that can bear the weight of truth. I used to say that phrase to my leaders all the time. I would say your number one job as a leader is to create a relational bridge that can bear the weight of truth. The shorter version of that, I would say to my leaders often, is kids won't typically talk with you about spiritual things until they know they can talk with you about anything, right? And so in the first part, we talked about how we need to show them, right? We need to show them maturity. We need to show them passion. We need to show them our faithfulness. We need to show them our attention, right? So let's talk about two more aspects of creating that family culture, two more aspects of becoming that spiritual father, spiritual mother, right? So we need to tell them. That's number 2. And number 3, give them. We need to tell them and give them. So here's some things that we need to tell them, right? We need to tell them our story. Number 1, our story, right? Your story of how you came to Christ and your ongoing stories of how you have gone through many challenging moments and seasons in your life and Christ has brought you through. Those are some of the greatest weapons that you have, or some of the greatest opportunities that you have for truth to pass from your heart into their heart on that relational bridge, right? Right. So I'm going to tell them my story, right? And again, I want you to learn how to tell your story, the story of how you came to know Christ, right? And then I also want you to learn to feel comfortable with, hey, here's challenges that I'm going through, right? Here's the storms that I've gone through. Here's the things that I've faced, or me and my wife have faced, or spouse or family or whatnot. One of our great distinctives as Christians is not that we don't go through storms. It's how we go through the storm. It's that we went through it and we came out on the other side stronger and more blessed and more full of favor and grace and everything that God's done for us. That's distinctive that you and I have. This is important, right? Because if you go and look at the entire Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, and you look at the template or the model or the construct for how faith gets passed from one generation to the next, right? This is the typical pattern you would see in Scripture. You would see that faith is passed first and primarily through family. And then secondly, it would be through the church, or in the Old Testament or even early New Testament, it would be the synagogue, right? And then third, it would be through peer influence. In American culture, that all has been inverted. It's been flipped. And now primarily the influencers in the life of a student are peer influence through social media, right? So that's scary then, because what that means is that a lot of faith is not really being passed on. This is one of the reasons why our youth ministries have to become spiritual families. We have to have a healthy family culture, and our youth leaders, volunteer, part-time, full-time, all of the above, have to take on the mantle of I'm spiritual father, spiritual mother, spiritual mom, spiritual dad, right? Why am I doing that? Because I want truth to pass through the relational bridge that I've built. And so I got to learn to tell them my story, right? Secondly, tell them the truth. Tell them the truth. I think one of the great weaknesses of the last several decades of youth ministry is that it's not that we haven't focused on relationship. We have focused on relationship. It's just that we've fallen short in using relationship to teach and preach deep biblical truth. Here's what we've really done. We've exchanged enhanced relationship for biblical discipleship. We've called it discipleship because we were in small groups. Or we've called it discipleship because we were close to students and we knew a lot about them and we were talking about them. But discipleship is more than just enhanced relationship. Discipleship is when truth has been deposited into the heart of a young person and those seeds begin to grow and begin to produce fruit, right? Let me help you understand why this is so important. The recent study from One Hope, right? They did a study of students when it comes to truth. And here's what they determined. Gen Z students right now only have a 4% Christian worldview. If you're not familiar with the phrase Christian worldview, that is an understanding of how we view the world. It's like me looking through these glasses, or through the lens of the camera, right? I see everything through the lens of these glasses here, right? When I have a Christian worldview, I see everything in the world through the lens of Christianity and through core beliefs in Christianity, right? What are those core beliefs, right? This is just basic, real basic understanding of Christian worldview. There's 6 core beliefs that a student has to have in order for us to say that they have Christian worldview. Here they are. Number 1, Jesus was sinless. Number 2, God is all powerful. Number 3, salvation is a gift. It's not earned. Number 4, Satan is real. Number 5, we're called to evangelize and to share our faith, right? Number 6, the Bible is accurate and can be trusted as an authority in our life. That's pretty basic, friend. I mean, if you just think about it like that, this isn't like really deep stuff here. This is basic level thinking as a Christian. We're at 4%. Why are we at 4%? Because a recent Barna survey said this, that among lead pastors across America, among lead pastors, only 37% of lead pastors actually have a Christian worldview. Only 19% of youth pastors actually have a Christian worldview. Now here's the point here. You can't behave like a Christian if you don't believe like a Christian. You can't act like a Christian if you don't learn to think like a Christian, because our behavior and our actions stem from our thinking, right? So we have to tell them truth. We have to refuse to exchange enhanced relationship for biblical discipleship. One leads to the other, or one can lead to the other, but it doesn't necessarily go there unless we intentionally choose to say, I'm using this relational bridge. It's strong enough now to bear the weight of truth. And so what do we have to tell them? We have to tell them our story, and we have to tell them truth. Last section here. How do we do this? How do we create a family culture? How do we become spiritual mom, spiritual dad, right? Give them, right? We've talked about show them, tell them, give them. Last section here. What do we need to give them? Number 1, you got to give them your time, right? You got to give them their time. It takes time for relationships to be built. It takes time for the relational bridge to be built, right? This is the principle of reaping and sowing that Galatians 6:7 talks about, that Paul is talking about to the church in Galatia. He's saying whatever you sow, that is what you're going to reap. So let me just reduce that real simply to student ministry. He who spends the most time wins. Period. He who spends the most time wins. So if you're not making headway relationally with students, it's probably because you're not spending enough time. You have to give them time. Number 2, give them ownership. Give them ownership. Gen Z students need to own it. They need to be able to grab it, and they need to be able to run with it, right? Gone are the days of attractional youth ministry where everything needs to look great, sound great. The worship team has to be amazing. The preaching has to be unbelievable, incredible, everything. You know, that's good when we're doing big events. That's good when we're doing conventions and camps and conferences and all that kind of stuff. Those things still have a place. But week in, week out youth ministry is about you giving ownership to your students so that they can take it and they can run with it and they can say, this is mine, right? This is like, we need to put the student back in student ministry again, instead of adults feeling like they have to be the one to do everything, right? Number 3, what do we need to give them? We need to give them questions to wrestle with. Give them questions to wrestle with. Gen Z students need to wrestle with truth. So it's not enough just for you and I to present good, compelling, relevant biblical truth to them. We need to actually allow them the opportunity to wrestle with the truth, to ask questions. Listen, has God been afraid of the questions you've asked as an adult? No. And he's also not afraid of the questions that Gen Z students will ask. You and I sometimes are, but God's not. We have to allow them the opportunity to say, man, I'm wrestling with the truth. I need to talk through this, right? So I need to give them my time. I need to give them ownership. I need to give them opportunities to wrestle with truth. 2 more, or maybe 3 more here. Give them your words of affirmation. Give them your words of affirmation. Gen Z students I read this recently. It said this. It said that Gen Z students have a stress and anxiety level that is equivalent to insane asylum patients of the 1970s. That's how much pressure is on these students from families and teachers and coaches and life and bosses and all this kind of stuff. And so we have to be, as moms and dads, spiritual moms and dads, we have to be people of words of affirmation. 2 more. Give them your prayers. Give him your prayers. If you are not consistently praying by name for the students in your youth ministry, the devil is laughing at all your strategies, friends. but he trembles at your prayers. So give them your prayers. Last one, give him your heart. Give him your heart. Let me say it like this. Every once in a while in student ministry, if your heart's not broken, you're probably not doing it very well. You're probably not really moving towards the level of spiritual mom or spiritual dad in a student's life if every once in a while you don't get rejected, you don't get chewed out, you don't get cussed out, you don't get a student who stands you up and rejects you, right? Every once in a while your heart's going to get broken in this thing called student ministry. And I'm not making light of it, and I'm not saying that it's not hard. It is, but it's also a sign that you're doing it right. It means that you've given them your heart. I love what Jeannie Mayo says. She says youth ministry is like putting your heart on a stick and just holding it out there and just saying, hey, I'm here. I love you. I love you. So, hey, I hope this will help you as you talk about it among your group, as you assess how are we doing at creating a family culture in our student ministry? How are we doing at taking on the mantle of spiritual mom and spiritual dad, right? What are some things we need to do better at when we talk about show them or tell them or give them? Where are some areas where I can personally grow as a leader, whether I'm a volunteer, part-time, bivocational, full-time, or whether I'm in charge of the whole thing? How do I grow in these areas, right? So you're going to have a great conversation about this in your group. And thanks for letting me invest in you as a part of Boost 2023. God bless.